There we go. Nice. Okay.
So we'll give it a go.
Okay, we are not alone. And welcome everyone to another episode of Contact TV. And we are very excited. I'm excited as usual. I'm your host A, Leslie Mitchell Clark, and
Wes Roberts, welcome.
And our guest this evening or afternoon or whenever you choose to listen to us is Greg Sullivan. And I'm just going to read you a little bit about Greg. He's a very fascinating guy. Greg Sullivan is a researcher and author and experiencer who lives in Japan. And he coordinates JSETI, which is the Japan Center for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, a research organization currently working to expand awareness about positive human futures, ET disclosure, and benevolent ET contact in Japan. And since 2010, JSETI has led a new wave of ET contact and ascension work. And of course, Greg has also been very active in Japanese TV and print media for more than a decade. And his own publications include 4 books in Japanese, and of course, a number of appearances in all kinds of media. So we are extremely happy to welcome live from Tokyo,
Nice.
Mr. Greg Sullivan. Hey, Greg, how you doing?
Excellent. Hey, good evening to you guys. Good morning from Tokyo, and thanks for having me today.
All right.
Welcome.
That's a pleasure. I haven't done an English interview in quite a while, and it's great to be connecting internationally like this.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great.
Honto yo.
Hopefully, yeah. I didn't believe Leslie lived in all of these areas in Tokyo. That must have been an exciting experience for you too.
It was, and it was pretty. It was kind of a different Tokyo than now. I mean, I am really ancient in the extreme. So this was 1978, the first time, and I came over as an entertainer with my American band with tuxedos in every color and big hair, and that's what they wanted, and by gum, we gave it to them.
Yeah, that's the entertainment area. I was at 78. I would have been 1 at the time.
Yes, rub it in there, Greg.
Yeah.
Leslie was 5. Leslie was 5 at the time.
Yes, it was kind of a temple thing. But anyway, wonderful to talk to you. Now,
Yes.
we have a lot of curiosity about everything you're doing, but I thought it might be a good idea just to let you tell your story of perhaps your own experience, what sparked your interest in this I would dare to say very spiritual approach to the extraterrestrial contact experience.
Thank you. Yes, it's certainly been a wild ride for the past 8 years since we started the project full time. But it's the interest goes back to my childhood, and I had a couple of important books that came my way in late junior high school as well as mid high school that were really kind of groundbreaking in forming my worldview and also triggering kind of these memories in the soul. So I kind of, as I mentioned in a mail yesterday, I consider myself sort of an awakened starseed. And as this has all progressed and I look back now, it's all part of an ongoing sort of soul contract. And people often ask me, why are you an American doing this in a foreign country, even, such a different culture as Japan here. And I found that now I have a lot of the answers, and that involves, a lot of my past life connections here, as well as in the off-world part of it. So it's such an exciting thing for me to be. It combines what I'm doing here now combines everything I was interested in before, whether it be outdoor, traveling abroad, photography, writing. I'm doing everything, and music. Everything I've always been involved with up until now is all now come together in a sort of a service mission for the spiritual community here. It's interesting. There, as all of us, I think many of us start out with the standard fare of the old X-Files type UFO information and all the Project Grudge and all the sort of the stuff that was on TV for us in the West in the 80s and 90s, and then there's the step into the spiritual domain and this kind of information. But I think we're seeing like the conspiracy theory things and all that stuff. We're seeing a real convergence now. When we landed firmly in the spiritual side of things from the get-go in Japan. So there was actually, when I came here in the first 5 years I was here was sort of a training setup for getting used to living here and learning the language, like that. So I picked up the language quite quickly. I kind of joke to people that I downloaded the app, and, it's sort of like the translation. So that all kicked into high gear, learning terms like military industrial complex and interdimensional and things like that in Japanese. That really kicked into high gear with my language skills as we started the project here too. But the first 5 years was a big prep time, and then I actually moved home to New York for about a year and a half, and without any plan of ever coming back here. And then that's when, in 2009, a lot of light workers globally and starseeds globally had this mission activation happen. So as of November 2009, I had this enormous U-turn occur, and I was directed back into Japan. And that for the next year, or almost 2 years, leading up to the Fukushima disaster, what they call 3/11, that was all preparation. And then after 3/11 was the release of my first book and us going full time here. So it was this very orchestrated chain of events with our kind of, our supporting guides and our star family being involved in the background. But yeah, it's and then I'll talk about a little bit later the bringing the community. So I was dropped in the middle of a Japan that was actually 10 to 15 years behind us, even with all the same resources as far as YouTube and internet and everything. This topic of disclosure especially had been seriously boycotted. As you can imagine, the language difference is enormous. And to my shock and dismay, I found that just by simply not translating things, they can, these different publishers and different groups with agendas can kind of keep out whole blocks of information. So our work was connected quite heavily to the Disclosure Project and things like that, sort of ground zero for this new real ET, free energy type of research. And so I instantly was shown that, where we're supposed to fit into the puzzle here. So because of that, it's been so exciting to be in touch with a lot of people who the information was brand new to. That's sort of where the project started in 2010.
Wow.
The timing is unique.
That timing is really, now that you mentioned it, actually, we met only the year before that and began our work together, which is going to be profiled in our first book coming out soon. So right. I think that probably a lot of people went through transitions of all sorts at that time. And now, tell me, Greg, are you involved directly with Stephen Greer's organization? Are you using his techniques, which I find very profound and sort of Vedic in essence, in a way?
Yes, I basically at the time I had really no direct meditation training, or I was always interested in philosophy, but I actually had almost zero quote unquote new age or spiritual training. I had never been to any kind of workshop or gotten any certificate anywhere. I was completely in the music industry and having worked here for 5 years in Japan. So I kind of got thrown into the deep end, basically. And but thankfully, in the time before I left, my original contact experience was at the Isetti Ranch in Washington, and then that I had a couple of years of continued personal contact that was very very natural and easy to digest. And then just before I went back to Japan in the last year or so, I joined CSETI remotely and got the training manual, the training material. So just by reading that, I already had the kind of foundation involved. And one thing led to another, and I was not able to partake in an official C5 event even, but I had this base of personal contact already that was really, it dovetailed completely with everything they were saying in in Dr. Greer's books and in the manual, the training manual. So I came back here with that big manual. It was in a plastic binder, and the CDs that were with it, and one laser pointer and a radar detector, and that's how we started. So
Yeah.
yeah. And I found out that later that now all people all over the world are using that as a jumping off point and adding different bits and pieces. So as I was translating I knew that this was going to be something that I wanted to share with the Japanese public. So I when I came back to Japan in early 2010, I started to translate the meditations, the Vedic meditations, and that image training stuff, and also I also added a bit of a little bit of a step. That's quite a high hurdle for people who haven't done any meditation at all. So
True. Yeah.
I added a little bit of a sub step in the using the solfeggio frequencies, and I that was something that I felt comfortable with being an audio engineer and a musician. So when you're out in the field at night, your ears, your eyes, the light stimulation dies down, and your ears become a lot more sensitive too. So I found that using sound in the field was a great warm up to get people kind of more coherent, you might say.
Indeed, and then the just getting used to the idea that everything is vibration. I mean, I feel everything is vibration.
Yes.
And I think that shows a lot of that shows a lot of insight that you were able to make those kinds of tweak that a little bit so that people who are not. I mean, I've been a transcendental meditator for 40 years, so for
wow.
me, the Stephen Greer protocol as it is sort of nothing strange. But if you're just coming from, if you're an experiencer yourself, if you're just coming from a standpoint of neutrality, even it probably would seem a little intense, I think.
There are some people have made some shorter meditations and everything, and it's explained quite well in his books. I found that people listening to the lectures out there online were also a big help. So that was. Yeah, the material they've put together is really a good start for people. Yeah.
Indeed. And what are you communicating with a lot of different beings? I mean, I personally believe that there's a kind of a Gene Roddenberry-like federation of planets, if you will.
Yes. Yeah.
Benevolent, beings. So are you communicating with a number of these beings, or just maybe Pleiadians, or what's going on?
Good question. Yeah, actually, the one person that was a big cushion in between there is in the early. Speaking of the materials and how we got started, is I now realize that as I was kind of on my own and thrown in the deep end there, as I was reading those CSETI training materials, one of the big sources of inspiration spiritually coming in from places unseen was Sherry Adamak, who was the early. Assistant of Dr. Greer, who put the materials together, and it was like, and I was reading the documents of their reports, and it literally felt like I was in the event with them. They were projecting this consciousness to me it was like I was there with them. I could feel had such a deep level of understanding of the training materials through that support. Now I now realize now as well. So that was a huge wind in the sails. It took a lot of gusto to get back here because my guides used a lot of my personal life to do that as well. I wasn't planning on being back here at all, so that's a whole other story. But yeah, and then in long story short, it's the next step is that once you go from all the different field phenomenon, is that definitely I agree that a lot of the names you hear. We have star root connections to these groups. A lot of the galactic groups, the galactic family of Arcturus, Pleiadians, Sirians, the Orion Federation. So I find that definitely James's work at Mount Adams there, and he said he was very instrumental there. And there's also Lisa Royal, who's been quite active in Japan for quite a lot of years, and she has that book, The Prism of Lyra, which is very the galactic roots phase of contact is going to be a new standard. That's sort of like step 2. I think that's going to be another. People are all on the same page that we want to make spiritual contact, but the next step that's really a lot of people are starting to really agree upon, I think, is this galactic roots thing, that it's not hi, nice to meet you. It's hey, long time no see.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
And they've been intimately involved with us for eons. So and then with the whole starseed thing, we have all the past lives. Everyone with these hybrid, myself included, with the hybrid thing. So I was told by a Japanese master monk. He first saw my Arcturian soul roots, and then slowly that started to come together, where I felt the energy of this group. And what you find is, if people listening, I would love if people got hints for their field work or skywatch as well from this. But we found that in our outdoor field work, that the groups often fly in front of their constellation. So when you have the Orion Federation coming in, they'll fly around the Orion constellation, or the same thing with the Pleiades and the Sirius as well. So one time we had a ship that came in, and it flew across Orion and made a 90-degree check and went whoa, right in front of us. Yeah, I mean, so and what you realize is that before you have an actual visual sighting, they're there energetically, kind of pushing in with this ambient field energy, and that each group has their own different flavor. I call it 31 flavors, like Baskin Robbins.
Which they probably have now in Tokyo.
Yes, they do actually.
I knew it.
But it's definitely a smorgasbord of beautiful energies, and you start to really connect to that characteristic, the energetic characteristic, the energetic signature of each group as well. But I think that comes a little bit later. They first really they don't want us to use the same division mind that we're in now, with all the problems that have been up until now. So it's sort of, that's where the unity consciousness and the oneness aspect, and the coherence aspect of the C5 work is so important as an entryway. Yeah. But we've had now, a lot of new groups coming in, and we just had, there's the animal hybrids, the feline and the dolphin human hybrids, and all of this different, the non-human, there's the humanoid beings, but then there's these sort of like other hybrid beings that are very active, and there's no limit to how many groups have actually interacted and are going to interact with us as well. So I found that it's each one has their own sort of special skill or thing they have to offer, and we've had over 4,000 participants in 8 years. So every group has their own DNA component. Every group has they get an energy download, and it's whatever that group needs, or whatever that place in the landmass of Japan where we're at becomes a acupuncture point for the grid work that happens as well. So it's such a multi-layered experience when you're out in the field like that.
Indeed. Wes, did you have something you wanted to ask?
I have two questions for you, Greg. One's just for me, and I guess one's for our viewing audience. Around the same timing that you indicated, something happened to me that required me to seek out a hypnotherapist, and that was Leslie. I didn't think about the timing, and I'll tell you why, and I wanted to ask you about that. I had sat on my first consciously recalled experience for 22 years before I moved on it. So the first question would be, was your sort of first download or awareness in 2009 or 10? Mine was not. And the second question was, what would you tell to a non-spiritual person that just says, why are you here? And I've had that question, like, why am I espousing the things that I do? So those are the two questions.
Thank you. Very interesting. Yeah. Very insightful questions. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. I think the first, I'm very thankful that I feel like I say I was thrown in the deep end, but up until that point, it was a very gradual and extremely palatable experience with the phenomenon. And I look back now and see that there was all these points along my life timeline that I had sort of insights or sort of different kinds of contact happening that weren't necessarily, being on a ship or something as intense as that at all. So no, to answer your question, definitely 2009 was sort of an activation that was more of me being moved into being physically back in Japan, and the actual contact started in I first went to the Isedi Ranch in 2007.
Okay.
And I was living in Tokyo at the time, and then I had up until then I had little sightings here and there that I didn't even realize were craft, but the period from 2007 until 2010 was an intensely compressed download of information, and part of that was simply YouTube. I went on this listening binge of Coast to Coast and everything, and I have Coast to thank for first hearing about the Isedi Ranch itself. So I was on Wi-Fi there in the early days of YouTube. Well, it wasn't maybe so early, but 2006 and 7, and I was going through like 6 to 8 hours of shows per day in Tokyo. There, it was this complete download dump of all the stuff that I had loved to read about in books before, but now with the audio component, it's so fast. It's so much faster. It's like an audio book. It's so much easier to get the essence of each researcher's work. So I was pinging and ponging back through dozens of interviews and things like that. So that was what my guides used to kind of get the ball rolling. It was a really natural process, and I think that's important for people to understand that they don't need to have this really intense experience to get the juices flowing, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah, it's everybody's journey is different. However, I would say, Greg, that probably in the top 90th percentile of the experiencers that I work with, they have, certain commonalities. One of them being that it's highly unusual to have isolated contact as an adult, that most of these dear people have had contact since the age of 3, and possibly there has even been something going on in utero. We don't really know, but a pattern of contact is usually present. It's not often remembered, but it's usually present. And then I think the other thing that's a big commonality that you touched on a little bit earlier, is your past life experiences, and the fact that you have a soul contract to be here now at this exciting time with a purpose, and that you no doubt could or have recalled past lives lived off-world.
Definitely.
I think that, and I think, as you mentioned, we've talked about this many times, that we are in a soul group with a number of evolved beings that we have genetic relationships with, and just resonating with that, understanding that we are here for a reason. We made a choice. We can bitch and moan and say, oh, I'm not getting the mainstream press and yada, yada, yada. We can complain as much as we want, but we have made a choice, all of us.
Volunteered,
here. We're like, what is the term I used the other day? We're like the midwives of disclosure.
Yes, exactly.
I see it. And now we're only dilated a small amount.
The birthing process is still,
maybe 1 centimeter.
That's
too much.
So, any other question, Greg? Like, what would you advise a non-spiritual, non-initiated person? Because I'm faced with this often enough.
Sure, true. Yes.
How would you?
I agree, though. Just to close off that last segment. Yeah, I agree that I'm sure that I've had dream contact. I have memories of being in strange places with dream contact, but none of that was really scary per se. And I agree. I would love to get a professional hypnotherapy. I got my first regression last year or 2 years ago, and I saw a couple of things, but nothing from this life. So I'm definitely, I agree that I'm sure there are some bigger events that happened in a sleep state or whatnot. But then that's an interesting thing with Wes's second question, is that I think in the West we get put on the podium, us, the experiencers and anyone doing these kind of shows and everything gets I feel when I go back to the US now, it's getting more and more kind of this inquisitive, as we put our theories and experiences forward, the blowback, the the rebound is a lot more intense. And I noticed in the last few years with this intense media, the info wars and everything since the Trump and Clinton election, it's been all the memes and all the things we rely on are now have been totally compromised. And it seems like all the sort of ways I used to build my argument have been sort of compromised or parodied in a way that seemed like we have to change our linguistics, change our approach a little bit. But I think, I've come to notice that I really started out, I want to convince people, and I used to, I used to really bother my parents and close friends at times with, I hadn't worked out the spiritual component yet, so it was a mixture of really scary information with my real experience, and my good friends are saying, "Oh my God, yeah, if someone as close to Greg is telling me this is really scary." There's aliens, So I had not worked out the kind of different levels of the experience yet. So I really try, and now being in Japan has taught me to be a lot more lenient and relaxed in that approach, and not to push it onto people. And you can really tell and read people when they're ready for it. And just the littlest thing can be a trigger. So I think it's important to be definitely non-aggressive and not pushy. I think the big thing between East and West is that we're really stuck into the paradigm of the scientific community. So in the West, we have to be real strong with proof and mount our theories up with as much real proof and things grounded in the non-spiritual 3D as we can. Whereas here, people will actually, even if they don't want to believe, they'll hear you out until you're done. And then they also have the strong, spiritual with the Buddhist culture here, and they're
Shinto and
they're Shinto, yes, and they're on the same page as far as they've gotten up to 4D as far as the ghosts and the spirits, the ancestral spirits. That's all a non-issue for them. So they have one foot in the door already. But I feel that there's been so much disinformation and fear mongering with the topic in the West that it's we have to kind of maybe be a little more calculated in our approach. But I would just say that the nice thing now is with these field experiences and the work that people can do, like with the CU5, is that you can have your own experience and you could just say to someone, "Hey, I'll show you. If you don't believe in this, so why don't we take a step outside at night and just
okay.
We're in a new paradigm where there's this new road that's opened up that was sort of never there before. There's a limit to how much video and photo evidence can tell. I think the real-time experience is like nothing else, like no other.
I have to
Wonderful.
agree.
Yes,
I agree completely. And it was interesting before we were going on the air. Wes and I were chatting a bit, and I was saying that there is a different feel to being in a country that is not restricted by what I would call Christian extremism or narrow extremism, really, of any kind. I don't mean to point a finger at one specific group or another. I'm just talking about a closing down of what you're able to accept. I always found, living in Japan, just as you mentioned, that the acceptance of other dimensions, the integration of spirit, the acceptance of even magic, the way they put salt by the sides of each door. There's a big integration with spirit, and not really if you explore this, you're going to hell. There isn't this polarization of narrowness, and I think in the coming, I think Japan is going to be a super major player in disclosure. I really do. I think we have the Lemurian point of view in Japan. I think the Western world is influenced more heavily by the more warlike Atlanteans, and we're kind of living out our karmas and behaviors once again. Which isn't to say that there isn't cross-pollination, but I would love to talk to you for a bit about the Yanaguni Monument or structure.
Oh yeah, yep.
And for those of you who are just hearing about that, there is a remarkable structure in the north of Japan. Is it off the coast of Hokkaido? Is that correct?
Actually, it's in the far south it's down near Taiwan. It's in the
Oh.
southern of the Okinawan area. Yes.
Okay, that's where it is, and so it there's an awful lot of debate about whether it is a natural structure. It looks to be a complex that was either a spaceport or a temple. It
Right.
has what I would call obviously machined architecture. I don't see how anyone could not accept that. Of course, believe it or not, there are groups of people that say it's like shale and it was naturally formed. I think when we air your show here, we're going to have to post some pictures of it so people will be able to see what we're talking about here. Now, what are your thoughts about that? I mean, I think the ancient aliens have been big players in Japan and all over the world since the dawn of time.
Yes.
What do you think about all that?
Definitely. I mean, one of the most powerful places we've had the contact happening is the Okinawa, and that's between kind of China and Taiwan and Japan. So it's down in the islands, the southern chain of islands. It was its own kingdom in previous centuries, and then they had a lot of damage, of course, occur in World War II. And Yonaguni is at the very edge. It's the farthest, I believe, what is the farthest west point of Japan, or the southernmost point of Japan, rather. So you have to take a prop plane to get there, and some TV crews have been there, definitely. And you take we met the guy who first, the scuba team who first discovered it there. I met him once 3 years ago. But it's the undersea ruins there at Yonaguni Island, and yeah, exactly. You see the walls and the straight curves. Oh, I'll show you. Yeah, so that area is like, well, it's a completely Lemurian, and you'll and the contact it's like as you fly from Japan over there, it's like you kind of cross over sort of like this time space line. It feels like it's a whole other energetic field down there. So we've had
a little more like a Polynesian, for lack of a better term. The people are different. They were the people in southern Japan were treated like African American people in the United States at one time. They were called, I forget the word for it, like it means red. Aka, is that it?
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So they've had a history. They're deeply spiritual roots in Okinawa there, and we've had some of the best experiences, like ETs on the ground and ships extremely close, ships being visible for over an hour, like on the surface of the ocean, and we have amazing video from there. Just to give people those ruins, you have to scuba dive to actually see, and the seas are very rough there. It's Yonaguni. Each island has, I think that in a total, Okinawa has about 8 main islands, and I find that the main island is sort of the jumping point, but the ones that are further south are even more mystical. And the one I always go to is called Ishigaki. That's where you get to Yonaguni from. And just recently, this summer, I was there, and we found very similar stones with the same kind of cut, just in a river out there.
Machined.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What a doubt.
Yeah.
And you'll see the look at this. That's my foot stepping. You see that 90-degree cut there, right here.
Oh my God. Yeah, a natural formation, right? Oh my goodness.
That's it. Well, it makes them feel good, right?
Yeah.
And these kind of machine like blocks, like cut, So it's there's definitely ruins all over that area. Are remnants of the Lemurian continent, or parts of it that broke off and became these islands. But it's a very I feel that the craft are in there, and they have a system of the shrines that they connect the islands with and everything. So we've had just one amazing experience after another, and I found that those islands are so powerfully protected as well that if you don't have a business being there with a spiritual mission, you won't be let in. So there's often we had like an intense wave of typhoons this year, and then some of the islands you can only get to by boat, and they often have cancellations because of rough seas. So we've had experiences where it wasn't the right time, and the boats were canceled, or and then when it was the right time, we were allowed in and got to see all the spiritual spots. And so it's, yeah, that whole area is as a treasure trove of mystery.
Do you think that we are, because of course Japan is a volcanic island, I mean, island series of islands. Do you think that we are liable to see more of these structures appear with seismic activity? That was that possible?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's only the tip of the iceberg. The ones that have been discovered, and then of course they get bashed on TV. They often, there's been Graham Hancock and his friend who lives here, a guy called Ehan they were active down there, and they got really bashed on TV. I think it was over 10 years ago, but and then there's been other Japanese crews that have gone down there, and they said, oh, this is. I was blown away. I was skeptical, but when I dove down there, I found I was completely convinced. And then they'll be poo-pooed at the end of the segment, but yeah, there's so many places in Japan, so many nooks and crannies, and as you said, the volcanic seismic activity is happening, and it's really, and there's the the tectonic plates that are meeting here, and so. It's really the front lines of ascension in some ways. We've had a lot of ascension, what I call ascension earthquakes this year. Osaka had one, and then we had a major contact event in Hokkaido just last month, and before and after the event there was an earthquake. I'm sorry, between my two visits there was a large earthquake that was in the beginning of September, and then after we finished our contact work, they had this giant meteorite, which was like a alleged meteor. It was on national news on NHK television. It flew over the entire island, sort of changing the energy field there.
Wow. So yeah,
it's an interdimensional thing as well. But I'm sure that there'll be a lot of these kind of ancient ruins and old power sites that are going to be coming back online as well.
I think so, and we have that amazing power grid that extends from Ireland, all the way really across the circumference of the world. It's offline right now, and the thing that terrifies the West more than anything is not being able to profit off of energy. This is what this is why Nikolai Tesla is dead, essentially.
Yes.
It's ongoing. Even the whiff of free energy sends these Republicans into spasms, greed spasms.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah. So I mean, we got to get the spiritual component down first.
Yeah.
Speaking of the lines, I just got kind of chills because last weekend we were in this, you might have seen a lot of videos at this Sakurajima. It's called Sakura Island. It's the big volcano that had a lot of the ships going in and out of it. And we were down there. That's a picture of it from sort of a distance. We were down there in just a little bit north of Okinawa. Is the tip of the main island, the southern edge of the main islands in Japan. We found that there was this kind of negative grid, the black magic grids coming out of Egypt. And so I saw in one day 2 camel signs, like camels. I was seeing sphinxes everywhere, and our guidance came in. I'm going to jump up in level here into the ascension work now, but we were there clearing, and it was completely clear skies, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, on top of this other volcano there, ones that are quite active now, this giant cloud ship appeared and was sort of like doing this energy work. And we were told afterwards that, we got the grid reprogrammed, and there was also some kind of old beings, some not so nice beings inside that mountain, inside those volcanoes as well, that got evicted, so to speak. Okay. Yeah, so that kind of stuff goes on as well.
Indeed.
Who's involved with that is Kurt Cobain. He's now back in the Pleiades. Yeah, Kurt is back in the Pleiades, and he's real. He comes in. I was awoken the night before the contact work, awoken at 4 a.m., and they were blasting me from inside of this volcano I just showed you, and they're like, we're getting ready to go in. And it was a huge mission in this spot for them. Because in years past, when I had gone there, when I had been there as a light worker, I was getting hit with this really negative energy, like, we don't want you here, get out of here, kind of, so it was always sort of a scary place, but we completely cleared it out this time.
That's right. And what do you accredit that tainted energy to? Was it what happened in Egypt? Was it when everything fell apart, the lost, no more bloodlines, everything in chaos? Well, the Greeks come in.
It ties into that Archon grid, the Archon network, and there's the ancient stargates were taken over, and with Stonehenge and a lot of that kind of what they call the Archon network has had a presence in the energetic grid as well. So when I went to Stonehenge, I couldn't even get near the place. I was almost sick. There's I think a lot of what we're doing with the contact work is actually grid work and reprogramming clearing out trauma from the land, as well as kind of reconnecting this sort of ascension grid, because that's how the planet is receiving tons of energy from galactic center and through the solar flares, and that needs to be grounded in a new system, an energy body system. So what you find, a lot of that a lot of those connections have been unplugged in the the Atlantean cycle.
Yeah, a couple of things. One is we don't want the show to run away without you telling us and our viewers what you need and how they can get a hold of you.
Yes.
And also, I was curious to know if your download, so to speak, prepared you for this work.
Let's see. First off, I'll have my book coming out in English. I've just started outlining it. I have a chapter in a book called Paths to Contact that's out there online, where several people from around the world took part in that. But my official book is going to be coming out next year. It'll be self-published, people can find us at JCETI, JCETI on YouTube and Vimeo. We have more in English content coming, but a lot of our videos from the field are up there, especially on the Vimeo site, if you search under JCETI. And there's also an English tab under jceti.org. And so I'm prepping a lot of the, I've just been completely it takes all my energy to do the Japanese part of it. So I'm finally getting the green light to share a lot of this stuff in English too. Yeah. Basically the inspiration, very good question there, Wes, is that it's been a learning process, learning as you go, on the job training, at first it was sink or swim, but I've had a lot of my soul family, so many, dozens and dozens of our first participants were my own soul family, and we've had, unbelievable backup and support. So I don't mean to freak anyone out with the comments I just made there, but I just mean to say that it's such an unbelievable story, what's happening with this ascension wave, and what we've been told in the last within the first year or two of our work, the guides and the ETs were saying that contact is a part of ascension. The greater picture, the bigger context is ascension. So don't get lost in UFO research. Don't get lost in ET contact itself. You get the bigger picture.
Right.
So, but we've had unbelievable support. So just feeling that, and it's also an energetic thing. And as I've done a lot of the clearing out of all of these old programs and turning and activating the light body. And so I went from an awakened starseed to an activated starseed, which means you're actually bringing in a lot more of the higher dimensional potential. And it's not only a mental thing, it's an energetic thing. So we're serving a much larger community now, and just being thrown into all these different situations, but you're thrown into situations to learn, and there's never anything you can't handle. So it's been an amazing and a joyous ride so far.
Oh, magnificent. I just love to hear about this.
Me too.
Greg, when we're talking about ascension, which I believe is primary, I mean, I think that's what our brothers and sisters are really waiting for.
Yeah.
Because if we can't communicate with them with love and openness, what's the point? So I have to wonder, do you feel that ascension, if we achieve a high vibration in most of the world, or among most of the human beings, can we ascend as as a people, as Terrans. And, you know, I guess my concern is that, you know, we're really, in some sense, as Bashar says, masters of limitation. You know, we're dealing with, on this planet, a whole wide scope of conscious beings. We have, you know, people who are awakened like yourself and who are trying to do the good work. We have people that are practically animals. Seriously.
Oh, yes.
You know, we do. We have the widest of, you know,
Yep.
spectrum going on here. How can we possibly bring everyone along at the same time? Or do we? Or will we?
Yeah, I definitely think it's possible, and that this new consciousness, it's a resonance, and I find that it's like we're purging this sickness that's been plaguing the world for so long, and as far as ascension, and one more comment on Wes's question there is I wouldn't be here as well if it wasn't for my soul sister Lisa Renee. Everyone should check out her work. Oh my God, you know, she's been an instrumental part of this as well, remotely. So that's that being said, the yeah, I think when we find how much damage had been done unknowingly, and the hidden human history they call HHH, human history, and as we're getting all these memories back through contact and through the information that's coming through downloads and into the Earth grid. I think it's we're going. It's not like we have to jump anywhere we've never been before. We're actually returning to what is a proper balance. So we're returning to equilibrium in all sorts of levels. So I definitely think it's possible, and I've seen through our private session work and just complete turnarounds with people that they're not themselves. They're really infiltrated and influenced by kind of unseen influences. So as you start to clear those out, and it's you'll see an unbelievable transformation happen. So as that happens on a personal level, it's also reflecting the collective as well. So yeah, I think we're coming into a major crescendo where there's these phenomenon that people are unable to deny. Whether it be chemtrails or these things, it's right in front of you. The world that was hidden now is right in front of us. So it's not a matter of believing it. It's going to be, everyone's going to know.
Yeah. And it's a grassroots movement. I have always known that this really wouldn't happen, through the government. Too corrupt, the toxic agenda. I never expected it to happen through the government. Now, Greg, how many infusions of DNA do you think there have been in the Terran? You mentioned archons, and maybe you can explain a little bit about that. I'm really not totally familiar with what that means.
Yep. Well, it's basically, there's a lot of it, especially with the in Japan here with the they'll do the Shinto blessings. They'll bless a car, and they're very aware of the negative, the kind of like lower spirits, the lower astral. And I find that a lot of the astral entities have been a lot of times misidentified as ETs as well. So there's that component, and it's a whole energetic jungle out there. So we have military mind control, these scalar technologies that have been abused, and the targeted individual thing. People like us on the front lines here have been blasted by all sorts of interference, and that can be man-made, and also it's not man-made as well. There's also thought forms and these astral entities. So I find that I've had to be, that was what they call the dark arts trading. And there's all sorts of people in the industry there who are in this for the wrong reasons, and they attract a certain energy. So, you've got the people who come in and they just want to, you become their signpost. I stand out here being 6'5" in Japan. So people come in for contact work and to hear what I have to say, and then there's been, the people the kind of riding on the coattails, so to speak, and you experience all these different things as stewarding a community here, and you realize that it's not only this human influence; there's also other unseen negative influences that we have to clear out, and you know.
So the archons are a bit maybe, like the jinn. They exist in some other dimension that is akin to our lower astral level.
Yes.
They can manifest in different ways. They're tricksters. They love to F around with people and
puppet masters.
Get in their heads,
and
they get off on our energy. Boy, it sure sounds like the ancient jinn, and I have to think that people knew about interdimensional beings.
That's right.
And would archons then be the same type of being as maybe what we refer to as shadow people in paranormal investigations?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's all those type of things. The occult dimension of it, the shadow people. That all the scary phenomenon is sort of people. There's actually an entire encyclopedia of these kind of beings in Japan, and they're all basically astral beings that can look deformed or scary or weird. So I find that all has a certain energetic signature, and I was blessed to. I'll tell people I instantly took the elevator to the penthouse. So once you get used to the penthouse view, like this view out here, you know the difference. You get a diagonal angle on things, and you feel, and when you can start to feel that, wait a minute, this person's saying that they're channeling this kind of being, but no, that's not. You can start to really feel the energy in the room is different, or in this it could be in any sort of different scenario. But anyway, that was my kind of energetic training, the energetic self mastery that being in touch with the higher dimensional beings made it so easy.
Oh okay.
Yeah. But it's an energetic discernment, and you're right. And there's kind of beings, how do you say, like that aren't off the wheel of reincarnation. They've achieved some level of mastery, but they still have social and religious prejudice.
Yeah. You've met my mother.
And they want to espouse
but
their.
She'll be back.
She'll come back. Some of these, teachers. And people who have schools, they want to still espouse their teachings through people who followed them in the past. That especially with cult groups and religious groups too. So it's a whole spectrum of energy. And the beautiful thing is that these galactic beings are beyond all those human limitations. So that should be our guiding star. And
but they understand them compassionately, which is why they're letting us sort of fight our way out. Because I think we have to. I think it's like when you're raising your children, you have to allow them to screw up. You have to allow them to become independent, and sometimes that's not all that pleasant. So they've been standing back, doing their what is the Star Trek protocol for non-involvement? What do they call it?
Yes.
Anyway, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
And this is just an odd question, I think, but in Japanese ancient, I'm going to use the term mythology.
Yeah.
Is there a hierarchy of gods, as it were, that correspond to human beings in the same sense as the Nordic god, the Norse gods, and the Greek gods, and the gods of South America? We find these hierarchies, and the beings that seem to display the same types of characteristics. Are they archetypes? Or were they real individuals who came and affected these civilizations?
And then we'll need to end up on this one, Greg.
Yeah.
It's 9 o'clock.
Oh man, what is boy, that flew by.
Sorry.
Let's do another one. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we're getting into some good stuff here. Yeah. And the Japanese also, just on that last point, is they have a phrase to say something made me say that, or something made me do that, and they have this idea of the puppet being puppeted or people in a good way and a bad way. There's even a manga cartoon called JoJo that shows like the benevolent guides behind like a 3 or 4 meter guide behind someone giving them powers or abilities, so they're very up on all that stuff. I'm sorry, what was the question?
I just wondered if there was a hierarchy of gods similar to other cultures.
Definitely in the Shinto, they say that the Shinto is the native religion. Buddhism came through India and through China into Japan, and that's after Shinto. So Shinto is an esoteric. It's not even a philosophy. It's the ancient religion, and many people here were involved with the Koshinto, which is the ancient Shinto, and that's it's completely nature based, and they have it's the God in everything, the God in every stone and every grain of rice type. That's where you hear about that. But in the shrines, the spirits in each shrine, one God will have a network of shrines across the country, and they'll be enshrined in a main place. And then there's there's shrines that have the God that's always there, or then there's the ones that have the bell that you shake on the rope, and that's calling them in. So there's an elaborate network of practice in Shinto, and there, as you said, you're right. The gods could be a local king that is being enshrined there, a deceased royalty member, and then there's imperial family. I should say, sorry, a feudal lord, a local feudal lord at the bottom, going up into the human imperial family level. Then you go up into what I would believe would be like an Anunnaki type of hybrid, like the hybrid type of being. And then you go into the actual ETs, and then they go off all the way into their creation myths with Izanagi and Izanami, which are kind of like more cosmic forces, like Quetzalcoatl or something like that. They are impersonated as people in the Kojiki, in the ancient Shinto scripts, but they're actually pointing to cosmic energies and neutrons and protons and things like that, I believe.
Yeah, there's knowledge of that. I have experienced incredible levels of high vibration at Shinto shrines in Japan. In fact, the whole country, there are so many shrines that it affects. The atmosphere is rarefied. I can feel it as soon as I step off the plane. Yes. That I'm already, breathing at a higher level for sure. But well, I think it's time. We have to say goodbye for now.
Yeah, well,
but
oh
my
guys.
goodness,
Thank you so much.
Rick, we can't wait to have you back on. Do you have any plans to be back in North America anytime soon?
I'm going to be holed up at home over the holidays in Boston area. I'm getting deep into this book, and I've calculated now that I have about 7 books I want to do. And
oh yeah.
I have so much stuff that we still want to put into form. So I'll be. We have a new website too called CE5 Japan, CE5-Japan, and that's going to be an English dedicated site. So
okay.
I plan to also get up a lot of our videos with English narration, and we have our own little. We did the Contact app in Japanese as of last year, and also I'll be doing a sort of a little bit of a mini course on for beginners that'll be in English too online. So a lot of new stuff coming up next year. Yeah.
Great.
Well, hope to meet you guys in person someday in Toronto. Yeah, I'd love to do that.
I know you will, and hopefully as soon as our book is out, we'll be able to come and present it at various places. And
that would be great.
And Greg, I just want to thank you for everything that you are doing to raise consciousness. I'm so glad you decided to come into this physical life right now. And we're going to see some amazing things. Thank you, Greg Sullivan. We look forward to having you back on perhaps in the spring when the book is ready to come out. How about that?
Awesome. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Wes. I appreciate it very much. Have a great rest of your year. And it was a pleasure today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Good night. And remember, we are not alone.